Hello, welcome to another Man and Great book review. Today's book is Oliver Sacks' The Last Interview and Other Conversations by Oliver Sacks, published in 2016 by Melville House. It's 220 pages. This is part of the Last Interview book series. Oliver Sacks was a British-born American neurologist and author of popular science books. His most famous book is Awakenings, which is a series of case studies about patients he treated who were in a catatonic state from a rare neurological disease called sleepy sickness. He treated them with L-Dopa, and all of them briefly came out of their catatonic states and began to become active again. Awakenings was made into a popular movie starring Robin Williams and Robert De Niro. Sacks also wrote a book called The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat, which is a series of case studies about people who had brain damage to the right hemisphere of their brain, which affected their view of reality. The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat was actually made into an opera, of all things. And his book, Musicophilia, which was about how music affects the brain, was the basis of a television documentary. In addition to those books, Sacks also wrote about deafness, blindness, migraine headaches, and autism. Oliver Sacks died in 2015 from cancer. He had a rare form of cancer of the eye that spread into his brain and eventually killed him. He died at the age of 80. Sacks was, despite his popularity as a writer, notoriously shy. He occasionally stuttered, and he suffered a type of aphasia where he didn't recognize people's faces. So even members of his own family, he couldn't recognize them by looking at their face. He had to wait till they spoke because he could recognize their voices. And late in life, he lost his ability to see in three dimensions. He lost stereo vision, and so he lost his depth perception. So all these things, along with his natural shyness, made him a reluctant interviewer. Despite his long career, he didn't do very many interviews. This book collects 7 of these fairly rare interviews. Most of them were either radio or television interviews and have been transcribed, most of them for the first time, in this book. The first interview begins in 1987, and the final interview with his friend NPR reporter Robert Coleridge was done in August of 2015, just 3 months before his death. In all of these interviews, you sense his fascination with the human brain and the way our sense of reality is based on how our brain processes information. Toward the end of his life, in his last few interviews, he kind of reveals more about his personal life. He was a notoriously private person. He came out as gay just a few years before his death. He was very reluctant to talk about his own life. He finally wrote an autobiography, which came out just before his death. And in his last interview with Robert Coleridge, he talks about mortality and his awareness of his income. He knew that he only had a few months left to live. His doctors told him that. And he, talks about how he's not looking forward to dying, but at the same time he has this kind of acceptance about it. So it's a really moving interview, the very last one. He comes across in all these interviews as a man full of empathy for other people. He's a very warm-hearted, kind person. Despite his shyness, he did like other people. So if you've read any of Oliver Sacks' books or you're aware of the movie Awakenings and you want to learn more about him, these interviews give you a rare insight into his thought process and his process about writing. He does talk quite a bit about how he wrote these stories, and he was looking not just to write dry scientific case histories, but he was looking for kind of literary quality to them as well. So if you're interested in Oliver Sacks and his work, this is a really good book to dip into. The book is Oliver Sacks, The Last Interview and Other Conversations by Oliver Sacks. This has been another Man and Great book review. Thanks for watching.